Hi, welcome to the Civilization Project. My name is Prathamesh and I'm your host for today. For the last 2 years, I've been studying the relationship between the decisions we make and the reality we experience. And this research essentially is on 5 primary levels, starting with the decisions we make for ourselves. For example, our education, our career, our jobs, our investments, followed by the decisions we make as teams, then as a society, then as a nation state, and finally the global decisions we make for the entire human civilization. If we look around, yes, there are conflicts on all these 5 levels, starting from gender debate in the West to the ongoing wars in Ukraine and Israel. But it is my firm belief that it is our choices which are leading to these conflicts. Meaning, if you really want to create a better world, if you really want to create a better reality for the entire human civilization, we need to learn how to make better decisions. Which is why I wanted to have this conversation with Aditya and Neil today. Because you see, when it comes to our personal lives, the money we invest, how we invest it, where we invest it, all of these are very critical decisions and which can actually change our life for good or bad. Yes, we have a few handful examples of extraordinary people who have made immense amount of wealth in the markets. But then there are also these countless unheard of stories of people who have gone to the gutters because they made some really bad financial decisions. So that's why I wanted to learn how to make good financial decisions, how to make good investment decisions, which is why we have 2 very dear friends of mine, Aditya and Neil, to have this chat on how to make our investment decisions. Brief introductions. Aditya is an active investor and he's partner and vice president at Complete Circle Capital. He shares a lot of knowledge on Twitter regularly, and Neil is a journalist and deputy editor at Live Mint and exclusively covers a lot of financial stories every day. Welcome Aditya and Neil to the Civilization Project podcast.
Thank you.
Looking forward to have a very wide-ranging and fun conversation with both of you.
Absolutely.
Cool. Before we dive deep into the contents of the book, my first curious question was, why did you decide to write a book on this guy, Rakesh Jhunjhunwala?
So we released the book in May, and now that I think of it, this is actually a dangerous book to write at this time. And I'll tell you why I'm saying this, because we're in the middle of an unprecedented bull market.
Right.
We've had only one bad year, 2015, one negative year in the past 8 or 10 years. And the amount of wealth creation is phenomenal. It's beyond what I have ever imagined, ever dreamed. And I'm a pessimist at heart. Like I'm always thinking, when is the next blowout going to happen?
Right.
So his story, which is a story of enormous success in a bull market, is can go straight to somebody's head in a time like this. So just that one disclaimer. So why did we decide to write it? 2 reasons. One is that he epitomizes the Indian investor's dream, right? If you were to close your eyes, if there's one person who symbolizes that for us. The more practical reason is that when he passed away, it seemed like the right time to.
Right. Beautiful. And Aditya, how did you get involved in this project?
So I think, like Neil said, right, when you close your eyes and you think of, or you conjure up the image of a personality that, just represents the Indian market, I think is the big bull, right? That's the biggest example of that. He has passed away and we still call him the big bull, right?
Yes.
That's the respect he has, that's the aura he had. In fact, there's a very interesting story of how I actually got to know about the big bull was, in 2012, I was just starting my bachelor's in financial markets.
Okay.
And I was just seeing a couple of my friends, my classmates dabbling in IPOs, right? And I also did the same. And I just casually remarked to a friend that, I want to learn more about the markets.
Right.
And his answer was, you leave all of that, you go ahead and you first study about this great personality called Rakesh Jhunjhunwala.
Right.
So that was his aura. I studied everything about him. I went through his interviews, and then of course, it changed a lot in me as an investor, right?
Beautiful.
And like Neil said, the space was just wide open. It was, we just thought to ourselves that time, and we were laughing to ourselves that this space has been open for all these years.
Right.
No one has actually written something on the big bull, and that's how we came to.
Right. But that's actually very weird, no? So figure like Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, one would have guessed there are so many books written of this guy, because if we search for, say, Warren Buffett, for example, I'm sure there are hundreds of books,
absolutely,
if not thousands, which dive deep into his philosophy and his style of investing and so on and so forth. But why do you think then nobody covered Rakesh Jhunjhunwala per se?
So if you actually Google him, there are hundreds of videos, articles, blogs, everything about him.
Okay.
What nobody had done is put it all in one place.
Right.
And that was the centrality of our work.
Okay.
So for somebody who followed every twist and turn in his life, they might know a lot of the stuff that we written in the first part of the book. But it's all scattered, like, all over.
Right. Interesting.
And Prathamesh, what really differentiates our book is we don't really tell that okay he was a god and you should blindly follow him. In fact, we give you a very balanced approach about his investing life and his general life, and we also tell you what to do, what to learn from him, and what not to learn from him. Right. So I think that is something that differentiates our book, and of course we delve into his hits and misses both.
Interesting.
Why did he go wrong? Why did he go very right on this bet? So I think there's a lot of I would say matter in the book that really differentiates us.
Okay. No, but then that begs me to ask you a question. So if you look at Rakesh Jhunjhunwala as an investor, right? What was his style of investing? How would you describe that?
That is the hardest thing.
Yeah.
Because he's a man of so many contradictions.
Right.
There are times when he appeared to have picked stocks. In fact, some of his key stocks, like Titan, on a whim, on a call by a broker.
Correct. Okay.
Yet he did have a philosophy which he outlined. He was asked many times and he kind of gave the major points. So you can't really classify him as growth or value or any of those typical buckets that you put people in.
Okay.
Rakesh cannot be categorized.
Interesting.
I mean, honestly, both of us have followed him over the years. Both of us have done a lot of these book sessions, and whenever we get this answer, the first thing that we do is laugh because you can't really club him into a bucket. He did everything, honestly. He went short, he went long.
He was a trader also, investor also simultaneously. So,
but I think that's the beauty, I mean, I think we were I think Neil was speaking to Mr. Damani or Aprajita was speaking to Mr. Damani, and he said that the beauty of RJ is that not trying to find that which bucket he belongs to, but doing everything seamlessly.
Interesting.
Right. So yeah, can't really put him in a bucket.
Sorry. But then if again let's say I am an individual investor, right, and I want to learn from Rakesh Jhunjhunwala. Then how do I go about it? If you're saying his style was so diverse and he's essentially made all types of calls, then where do I start if it comes to me learning how to invest money?
So that is a lesson in itself. The fact that Rakesh evolved from being primarily a trader in the 1990s to picking these amazing stocks, Titan, Crystal, Lupin in the early 2000s, and becoming something like a buy and hold investor. Although he continued his trading on the side, but that mattered less and less to his fortune. So that's, I think, lesson number one, that you might not be the same investor throughout your life. He wasn't.
Right.
The second is you can have a philosophy like he did, and yet do sometimes act on impulse. Sometimes there is this sixth sense, this emotional reasoning that we have, and we just jump on it.
Okay. Interesting. But then again, right now you just mentioned a couple of things, right? So one is you talked about his trading part, and you also talked about his long-term investing part. Correct me if I'm wrong, but my current understanding is both of these are like two very different mindsets altogether, right? So is it common to have someone who can do both trading and both investing?
It's almost impossible. It's almost the twain do not meet, generally speaking.
Right.
But they met in his case.
Right. But then if we have to deep dive on this, right? Can you elaborate a bit more on what is this trader mindset and what is this investor mindset, so that people like me can get an understanding of where do I fall?
Yeah. So the trader mindset is essentially a momentum mindset.
Okay.
Buy whatever is going up, and he himself spelled this out in a lot of interviews. Gujarati में कुछ कहते बढ़ारे something. तो buy while something is going up, and sell while something is going down. So you follow those short-term trends and catch them.
Okay.
And get out if the trend turns against you. In investing, you're not supposed to look at price action so much. You're supposed to look at a company's fundamentals, its intrinsic value, and then see if the current price is at sufficient discount to that intrinsic value that you can invest for the long term.
Right. Interesting. And what would be, so you are an active investor, right? So you are seeing the markets from a completely different lens than Sunil. In your view, what are the nuances between a trader and an investor?
I mean, see, I think Neil put it beautifully. See, a trader just follows the price action, as simple as that. Okay. You buy something at 100 and you sell it at 101 or 102, right? But an investor, when he looks at the price and the fundamentals, right, he would think to himself that, okay, you know, this is a asset which is worth 500 rupees and I'm getting it 100 rupees today, right? And at the same time, the asset value will also grow in the next 5-10 years. So
right.
he thinks to himself that, okay, in the next 10 years or the next 20 years, this 100 will become, say, 2000. Right. So he has a very long-term view. He becomes a sort of a business owner in the company, right? He subscribes to the vision, he subscribes to the management, he subscribes to the story, right? And he takes a long-term view. He becomes a business owner in the company. So, you know, one is very short-term and one is very long-term.
Right.
See, I have personally followed fundamental form of investing. You know, there are a few stocks in my portfolio which I have from the last 8 years, right? So, for me, you know, fundamental long-term investing makes money, as simple as that. So whenever I speak at forums, I tell them that, you know, 9 to 5 makes you money, 5 to 9 makes you a killing. Right. Because your money is working for you even when you are asleep.
Right.
And, you know, one thing that you have to remember is that, you know, when you bet on companies for the long term, right, you know, you get the chance to make some of the finest business managers or business entrepreneurs in the country work for you. Right. So I think for me, you know, that's the differentiation. And I personally advocate long-term investing because I think that's what makes a lot of money.
Right.
And the example is nowhere clearer than Mr. Jhunjhunwala because he was actively into trading,
right,
but he shifted his focus to long-term investing, right? So, you know, something changed in him. I'm sure a lot of us would have seen Scam 1992, and you know what really happened with him, that event that actually changed the course of their lives for Rakesh Damani, Ramesh Damani, Mr. Jhunjhunwala. You know, something clicked in their minds that, you know, this is not worth it.
Right.
You know, when you work towards something all your life and all of it can be just snatched from you in the instant of a second, right? You know, it's not
right.
worth it.
Right.
I want to just add one thing to this.
Sure.
So for retail investor, both options are there, trading and investing. But investing, I would argue, is infinitely more easier for a retail investor. Because there is this ecosystem of a well-regulated mutual fund industry out there.
Right.
And forget actively run funds, right? Buying and holding an index fund requires nothing, no knowledge of the market, nothing. You just have to buy and sit. Whereas trading, you have to really master the trends, maybe learn algorithmic software. And today's world is incredibly complicated. There is now AI coming in.
Yes.
So trading is probably not worth it for most retail investors.
I mean, you have so many algos. You know, people spend crores on their systems, on their coding languages to find out anomalies in the market. You know, they sell crores of quantity. So one bip in the market is called 5 paisa.
Yes.
So in a differential of 5 paisa also they do buying, selling.
Wow.
So right, you're basically competing with the likes of algos, people who have hundreds of crores at their disposal, you know, who have hundreds of quants at their disposal, right? So again, you know, a retail investor should keep things simple.
Right.
So kaisa hai na, so see Prathamesh, you know, the thing is, we as humans, right, you spoke in the start, right, how our decision making takes place, right?
Yes.
So, you know, in front of you, if someone comes and talks in a very complicated way, you know, he sounds very polished and all that, and then you have a guy telling you his investment philosophy in just 2 lines, right? You know, you would go with the complicated guy, even though you don't understand it. See, that's a mistake that a lot of us make. Even I made it in the start, thinking that, okay, complex is good. But you know, over the years, I have simplified my investment philosophy to just 2 lines, right? And a lot of these big investors also have their investment philosophies summarized to just 2 lines or 3 lines at the max.
Right.
So as a retail investor as well, you know, you keep your things simple. Right. Like Neil said, even an index fund is good. Index fund gives you 14 or 15%.
Right.
So effectively in 4 years, you're doubling your money.
Right.
But you don't have to do anything. You just have to go to the website, you just have to subscribe to the index fund and just let it go on autopilot. You know, you can rather work on your 9 to 5 so that अगर आप 15,000 रुपए का SIP कर रहे हो per month, you know, you can double that in the next 1 year or 2 years.
Right.
You work on your core competency. You say in the markets, we always say that, you know, you should work on those variables that you can control.
Right.
Okay, what I can control today as an investor, what I can put, what I study, my behavior, right, when the market falls, and the rest will be taken care of by the market.
Right.
In the side, you make sure that, you know, you work on your core competency, आप अपनी salary increase करो, आप अपने skills increase करो, so that, you know, the 15,000 rupees that you're putting today can be increased to say 30,000 rupees in the next year.
Right.
See, money makes money. Let me be very clear.
Yes.
Right. A lot of these big investors made a lot of big money because they put in big money.
Right.
right? I mean, RJ put like 30-40 crores in Titan, which turned into 12,000 crores today.
Yes.
So make sure that you work towards that goal.
Right.
You know, make big money.
Right.
And keep your investment decisions very simple, extremely simple, because simple works.
But I think that's the most difficult part, right? So across all the kinds of decisions per se, making things as simple as, you know, making it understand to a 5-year-old, I think that's the toughest part of the journey.
Correct.
And I think it's a lot of experiences which we gather which help us, you know, simplify that. But one thing, just trying to dig deeper into this, one thing which I just wanted to ask was, do you think ego plays a role here? यार मैं index fund में कैसे क्यों लगाऊँ? You know, because I want to show off that I've studied these companies and I want to invest in these companies because मेरे पास ये complicated logic है. Do you think that plays around? And if it does, can you guide us on how we can avoid it?
No, that's a fantastic question. So there are these products in the market called portfolio management services.
Right.
PMS, which has a minimum ticket size of 50 lakhs.
Right.
Usually that is now, Aditya also has a PMS, so he's probably going to beat me up after this discussion.
See, everybody has their views.
But a lot of them are marketed on the premise ki, sir, aap to bade aadmi ho, aapke paas 50 lakh hai, you can invest. And you're not like the retail guys who are like 5 lakhs, 50,000.
Right.
And actually, if you see, the average returns of PMS are not that different from mutual funds. In many cases, they are actually less than mutual funds.
Okay.
Plus, it's more tax inefficient than mutual funds because in PMS, whenever profits are booked, you are taxed.
Right.
Mutual funds, you're only taxed when you're redeeming the money.
Right.
So that is sold on ego. Then there's something called Alternative Investment Fund, AIF, which is also sold on ego. That is the 1 crore. So 50 lakhs is 1 crore. Or bade saab ki. So it plays a really, really big role. It's really important to look through all this. Recently in Mint, we did a story on one of India's largest PMS managers, Saurabh Mukherjee.
Okay. Yes, I remember. There was some update video which also you shared recently.
Yes. So very interesting story. Saurabh Mukherjee is perhaps one of India's most articulate, most well-defined investment gurus.
Okay.
And his philosophy is coffee can investing, that you buy these compounding stocks which have clean balance sheets, which have a competitive moat no other company can easily come in. They have good capital allocation. All of these things he had defined in his book, Consistent Compounders.
Right.
Coffee can investing. And the portfolio is called Consistent Compounders.
Okay.
And then in 2018, he launched a PMS based on this philosophy. And it did extremely well in the first few years.
Okay.
So he went from nothing to 9,000 crores in money that he got to invest.
And this was in what period? Like how many years?
2-3 years.
That's insane.
It's crazy. It's massive. And then, of course, in the last 2 years, things didn't work out. So what didn't work out, right, in his philosophy? Essentially, the companies that he bought, that he predicted would grow their earnings at north of 20-25%. That happened. They actually did grow their money at that kind of rate. It's just that the market had priced them really high when he bought them.
Okay.
And when Russia-Ukraine happened, when inflation rose, interest rates rose, the market suddenly started giving much lower valuations to these fast-growing companies.
Right.
So it suddenly didn't work out. And today he's facing a crisis where 40 crore redemptions every week he's facing.
Wow.
The money invested is down to 7,500 crores.
Okay.
So anyway, to cut a long story short, a lot of PMSs have ego plus an amazing story backing them.
Right.
But you have to really look through it all to figure out how it can pan out in different kinds of situations.
Interesting. I would love to hear your point of view on this.
See, the way I see it, Prathamesh, is that an investor has to be extremely self-aware.
Yes.
He has to ask himself some difficult questions such as, what would I do if the market falls by 20%? What would I do if the stock falls by 40-50%?
Right.
There's a very good quote that I had seen a few months back that doctors aren't going to help you, financial managers aren't going to help you, lawyers aren't going to help you. You have to help yourself.
Right.
Whatever decision you take in life, make sure that you understand at least the core concept of it, right?
Yes.
A retail investor or say a person with a 50 lakh or a 1 crore, he should at least understand what he's getting into.
Right.
Right. He should be at least aware of the things that are going to happen on the principal agent relationship. Agent kya karega? He should be well aware of that.
Right.
Now coming to ego, what really happens is that so I am an active equity investor, right? I research and pick my own equity stocks, and I also do passive mutual fund investing and active mutual fund investing.
Right.
So I'm doing all of the things basically, right? Got it. Now the thing is, where does the ego come in? Is that for example, assuming that I have a 9 to 5, assuming let's go back to 2015 when I was working in an investment bank. And let's assume that I have heard about equities as an asset class, and what I do is that when I know that okay, I don't have the capability to research, I don't have the time to research, I know that I am a very risk averse investor, just assuming, right? I know that when the market falls say 10-20%, I'm going to go straight towards the exit door, right? And I still go ahead and invest in direct equity.
Right.
I mean that would be something called as egoistic investing, because आपको पता है कि आप वो kind of investor नहीं हो, and still you go ahead and do it. Now coming to another form of a egoistic investor is when you think that you're right always.
Right.
You can't be right always. These are the markets. If you think you're right always, markets will humble you for sure, right? Because see, I'm a kind of investor who invests every month. I don't look at the levels. I don't look at. I don't call up my Jyotishi and ask him कि Jyotishi जी कब है अच्छा मुहूर्त में invest करो, right? I don't do all of that.
Right.
मेरे पास पैसा है, मैं invest कर देता हूँ.
Right.
See, I have invested during Demon. I have invested at the COVID bottom.
Okay.
I have invested at the top before COVID. मैंने हर time invest किया, and still I have a good CAGR on my portfolio.
Nice.
So that's the perfect example of why you should not time the markets. वो सब ना ego की बात आ जाती है.
Right.
कि भाई मैं PhD हूँ, मैं IIT से हूँ, मैं IIM से हूँ, मैं ये college से हूँ, मैं वो college से. So I can understand the markets more than anyone.
Right.
You can't.
Right.
ठीक है. If you think you can time the markets, if you think you know the market levels, then you're going to get a very good gift from the markets for sure. So that's another form of egoistic investing, where you think that you're above the markets, you know everything.
Right.
Right. So see, invest, like I said, before, there are only certain variables that you can control.
Yes.
Timing is not one of them.
Yes.
You can control the time in the market.
Right.
Okay. Assuming that you started investing 2012 May and the COVID fall came, what you could have done that time was, you could have controlled yourself. You would have reassured yourself कि भाई this is a temporary blip. See, even if the world is going to end, then no point of money, right? Anyways, right? क्या करोगे पैसे का? दुनिया खत्म होने ही वाली है तो. What you could have done is that maybe put in more money.
Right.
See, again, I was into clients. I was into stakeholder management that time. I called up a lot of my clients. Only a few of them had the guts to actually put in money. A lot of them actually questioned my sanity.
Right.
Okay, because when the market falls 30-40%, only the strong willed people will actually put in money or stay put.
Right.
Right. So different forms of egoistic investors are there, and yeah, I mean that's about it.
Interesting. No, I understand, and I think a couple of more things which I was getting sense of was, so the opposite of ego is fear, right? So then there's fear also, which you just mentioned. कि अभी COVID आ गया, blip आ गया, मैं अभी क्या करूँ? चलो बेच के नक्की करो. So these extreme emotions tend to drive these investment decisions, right?
Correct.
Do you think it's a good idea? I know the answer, but I'm just asking any which ways. Do you think it's a good idea to give in to our emotions at times when it comes to making these investment decisions?
Think
and any kind of emotion, right? So not just a negative emotion like fear, but also a positive emotion like euphoria. कि यार मार्केट अभी बहुत तेजी से आगे जाने वाला है, मोदी जी आ गए, चलो और पैसा लगाते हैं. So how do we control these emotions?
See, कैसा है ना प्रथमेश, we are human beings.
Right.
Emotions do drive us.
Right.
So if you ask me that if I put my money in a stock and it goes 4x, would I celebrate? Of course, absolutely.
Right.
Right. I would say I would.
You're giving us party today, no?
No, Prathamesh already took care of that. So कैसा कि obviously I would celebrate. I would send rockets and all that on WhatsApp groups for sure.
Right.
ठीक है, but कैसा है कि everything has to be substantiated with facts.
Of course.
See, again, assuming that you were at the bottom of COVID, right? You had a lot of these companies at dirt cheap valuations.
Right.
There was a very simple rationale that you had to present to yourself. Is the world ending? Yes. Then no use of money. No. Then put money. As simple as that. I mean, like I said, I keep my investment thesis extremely simple.
Right.
See, I meet a lot of promoters. I do plant visits, and sometimes emotions do help.
Right.
Okay. There are times when an Excel sheet or a con call or the numbers won't really represent the true picture of a company.
Right.
Again, on the good side and the bad side both.
Right.
ठीक है, हो सकता है कि his factory is in shambles and then you know कि okay, run away from this, or it could be that a company that is just what say 500 crores is having the state of the art facilities at his plant, right? He has SAP system, he has everything, right? So a lot of time emotions do take over, but make sure that you always substantiate it with facts.
Got it.
So that while you take decisions under the influence of emotions, but you also have those facts ready so that you're not going wrong. Right. So your facts are the fail safe in this case. That is how I do it.
Got it. Got it.
No, in fact, speaking of COVID, if I remember correctly, there's an interview in which Rakesh himself was selling at the start of COVID. Then he got back into the market when he realized that actually the world is not ending.
Right.
So it is very much okay to make mistakes. He's made a ton of them.
Right.
We've documented 3 of his big mistakes in our book.
Right.
There's another investor. So a lot of you might have heard of Dolly Khanna. So her husband Rajesh Khanna. Rajiv Khanna, sorry, not Khanna. Manages her portfolio, and I had the privilege of meeting him this year at the Tamil Nadu Investors Conference.
Okay.
And there was this image of him as this genius small cap stock picker, buy and hold, and that's how he made his fortune.
Right.
He told the stunned conference that that's not who I am. I am very much like a short-term trader. I try to spot these opportunities. फटाक से अंदर जाता हूँ, फटाक से निकल जाता हूँ. COVID के time he also panicked. Then he got back in. That is his philosophy. Now apparently he's reached a stage where doing that trading is incurring a massive tax bill.
Okay.
So he's moving some money into a mutual fund. So he said that the mutual fund he was investing in was one that has this kind of momentum strategy. So some of you might take a guess. He didn't say which one. He didn't say the name. So I'm also not going to. I'm not going to say the name. But that's what he did.
Interesting.
A lot of these guys, the reality is only half visible.
Right. Yeah, of course. I think that stands true for every kind of celebrity in our country. What we see in papers and what we see in news and what we see in media is just probably 1% of who they actually are.
Yeah,
and a lot of this background work that they do is completely invisible to the layman like me. But this essentially brings me to a very interesting topic. So again, when we talk about emotions or when we talk about different strategies of being a trader or being an investor, one key component is our risk appetite, right? So what kind of risk can we take when we make these kind of decisions? When it comes to Mr. Jhunjhunwala, what do you think his risk appetite was? Was it small? Was it large? Did it grow at some point? Did it shrink at other point? How was he with his relationship with risk?
So when you look at a mutual fund scheme information document, right? वहाँ पे एक riskometer होता है. Right. So I would मतलब जो भी होता है मतलब low risk to high risk. I think उसके आगे भी एक segment add कर देंगे, which is Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, and he was that kind of a risk investor. No, I'm very serious. I mean, jokes aside, but he took a lot of risk. He I mean, again, going back to the scam series, we all know the famous statement, अगर एक दिन और short रखता तो he would have been on the road. Right. He says something else, but which I don't want to add here. So he took a lot of risk. Being an investor and trader at the same time was such a big risk.
Of course.
He got into Titan when it was nothing.
Okay.
He held on to Titan. In fact, there's a very famous anecdote. 2002 when Mr. Bhaskar Bhatt took over Zarzis Desai as the MD of the company. He went ahead and met him. He subscribed to his vision. And that was when he said that when Titan hits 16% margin is the time to sell it. And you will not believe it, last year was when Titan hit 16% margin. Right. So from his portfolio worth of 42,000 crores में से 16,000 crore तो Titan ही है सिर्फ. Okay. Right. So कैसा है कि he was an extreme risk taker. Titan, he got it very right. DHFL was something he got extremely wrong. Okay. And you would be shocked to know that in both the cases, he did a similar kind of a due diligence जहाँ पे he met the promoter. अच्छा. And he was sold on both the visions. मतलब DHFL में Mr. Vadhwa ji के साथ he was sold and Titan में with Mr. Bhaskar but he was sold. Okay. And as Neil would tell you, he used to take extreme positions during budget and during before events. Okay. Over to Neil.
Yeah. So broadly on the question of risk, his initial capital was built on leverage. Okay. His first decade and a half of operations was leverage trading, and leverage trading by.
Before we go ahead, can you just briefly tell what leverage is?
Yes. So leverage is when you take on debt, when you borrow a lot of money and invest that in the market.
Okay. Please.
So that can amplify your returns because suddenly you are putting in more money, or it can destroy you because if the market goes against you, then you have to repay the money as well.
Yes.
So his initial fortune was built on leverage, and I think it probably took a toll on him somewhere. When we think of the health situation that he faced,
Okay.
I think that probably was ultimately a result of that stress. And in fact, we visited that bar that he used to frequent, Joffrey's. And they said that sir to काफी पहले आते थे, like in his sort of initial 10-15 years, बाद में he became more and more careful about that.
Okay. Yeah, I remember there was this one particular point in time, अचानक से उसके बाद he started talking about a lot of I want to clean my life, I want to live healthier now, so on and so forth. But again, going back to the topic of risk, right? Chalo, with Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, we can take him as an outlier who took extreme amount of risk, and probably he had the capital to back it up. When it comes to normal retail investors like me, how do we think about risk? How do we calculate risk? How do we assess? Because I don't know if you ask me if I should be risk averse, if I should be risk friendly, I don't know how to assess that for myself. Can you help me with understanding for a layman like me how to understand risk and how to assess what is my risk appetite?
So let me first talk about the overall market situation. The segment of futures and options in India has exploded so much in this bull market. Now the cash segment is a tiny fraction.
Okay.
And especially options, because there are options expiring on every single day of the week.
Yeah.
And there are these daily options as well, where next day, same day, you know what the hell is going to happen.
Right.
So clearly there are a lot of people trying to be Rakesh Jhunjhunwala out there, and that's a worrying sign. In terms of how we should think of risk, it is extremely difficult, because how does one predict how we'll react when the next COVID comes along, right? Every few months there's some new virus in China, and for that 10 split seconds, do you really think that, oh shit, it's coming back? So how would we react as investors? Because every single time it looks pretty convincing that things are going to go south.
Right.
The best way, the way that financial planners assess risk is that they try to make you imagine कि आप क्या ही करोगे if the market goes down 20%, and आप वो लिख दो. But it is at best an imperfect tool.
Right. But again, on that point, right? So if you ask me, कि market अगर 20% गिर जाएगा तो how would I react? If I've not been in that situation, if I've never invested money, and if I've never seen a 20% downfall, even my reaction will be imaginary, right? So how does that?
Absolutely, that's a limitation which I don't know how we can possibly overcome.
Right.
I think it will only happen when you see a correction, as simple as that.
Right.
Just continuing Neil's answer, he was speaking about F&O, right? So I have also tweeted this out ki amusement parks and casinos ka real competition is not other amusement parks and casinos, this is BSE and NSE.
Okay.
Because I think they should change the tagline to Khelo India Khelo. Right? Because everybody is coming to the markets thinking that यहाँ पे lottery ticket मिल रहा है अपने को.
Right.
1 or 0. ठीक है? Everything or nothing.
Okay.
But I think that's a very wrong way to look at the markets, because people have anchored to the fact that markets are only going up, looking at the last 2-3 years.
Right.
तो कैसा है कि number one, markets are not a lottery ticket, it's like any other business जहाँ पे आपको time, resource, अपना खून पसीना डालना पड़ेगा, right? And only then you would yield something. If you're lucky, you would yield it faster than others, but you should be just grateful you're not lucky, you're not very talented and all that, right? And बाकी to know your own risk, right? You need to only come with time.
Okay.
So the way I would react to risk today versus what I would react to risk 12 years back is extremely it's poles apart. Right. So there's no बोलते हैं ना कि how to learn investing. Right. You have to invest. So how to learn about risk? Face a downturn, face a COVID-like event.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
So basically, then, would you think it's okay for me to start with कि चलो मैं assume कर रहा हूँ मेरा moderate risk का appetite है, and then I start investing, and then basis my learning, my risk appetite can change whatever it changes. Does it sound fair?
I would say that plus err on the side of caution, because if you don't make as much money as your neighbor, it's okay. But if you lose a ton of money and your neighbor is still okay, then that's really hard to deal with.
Right. Got it. One more slightly different angle to risk again that I want to ask is, so you also mentioned, right? So RJ also took massive amount of risk, and especially the two cases that you mentioned, Titan and DHFL.
Yeah.
He knew he was taking a lot of risk,
Yeah.
but it was the trust on promoter which probably outweighed that risk for him. So these justifications, right, which can outweigh my risk, can you give more examples of what are the areas where we can treat these as valid justifications to take a particular amount of risk, which is say a little bit more than our regular appetite?
So I'll talk about what convinces me to take the risk in my investing that I do. So a very large part of my equity portfolio is in a single fund,
Okay.
Parag Parikh Flexi Cap, and the reason for it is that the style of the fund house, the way they explain their philosophy, the fact that they haven't gone launching scheme after scheme just to gather assets and increase their size, all of this was very compelling to me.
Okay.
They have this value investing philosophy that really and it's worked. Like at the end of the day, performance is.
Right.
I'll give you one small statistic. They tried to compare themselves to Berkshire Hathaway in the US. Berkshire Hathaway from 1965 to 2022 gave a CAGR, compounded annual growth rate, of 20%.
Okay.
This fund, since its inception, has given a compounded average growth rate of almost 20%.
Wow.
It's uncanny how similar it is.
Right.
Now, obviously, at inception, hardly anybody knew about it. The people who would have been there throughout would have been a tiny minority.
Right.
But even in recent times, it's been pretty damn good. Past 3 years, the CAGR has been 23% odd.
That's actually very good.
Yeah, it's been amazing. So that for me, if a fund manager is able to present and stick by those values,
right,
that helps me overcome my fear.
Got it. How would you guide me if I have to overcome my fear, or if I have to overcome my risk appetite?
Yeah, see, number one, like I said, you have to become a seasoned investor.
Right.
Okay. It could very well happen that a black swan event comes in the market. So just for everyone's knowledge, a black swan event is an event that nobody sees coming.
Right.
So COVID was a black swan event which actually affected the markets, and the markets dropped 33-35%, whatever it is.
Right.
So again, like Neil, let me take the example of myself, right? So kaisa hai ki earlier when my stocks used to fall 10-20%, I used to get worried. I used to question my conviction ki is this right, is this wrong? Right. Some of my stocks have even fallen 60-70%, but I have stayed put. Right?
Okay.
So number one, you have to control your own behavior, because you are your own best friend, your worst enemy in the markets. Okay. There are numerous stocks or numerous financial instruments that haven't worked for years, and then suddenly gave a spike, right? So for example, take the case of HUL. Okay. 2002 से लेके 2011 तक the stock was 0%.
Okay.
But after that it jumped 200-300%. Right. So if you normalize those returns over 10-12 years, it would be still a good CAGR. Right. So the thing is, markets will always keep throwing these googlies at you, right? So as an equity research analyst, our job is to find, say a Maruti, say a Ferrari which is trading at the valuation of a Maruti 800.
Got it.
कभी ना कभी तो वो valuation gap match होगा ही, right?
I think this is a very wonderful way of putting it, right? Yeah. एक बार repeat करो ना sir, audience के लिए वापस.
So I'm saying, as an equity research analyst, you have to find these Ferraris which are trading at the valuation of a Maruti 800.
Got it.
ठीक है. Only then you know that you're going to make say 10x, 20x, 30x, or just 4x, 2x,
right.
whatever it is.
Yeah, हमेशा रहने वाला है अभी मेरे साथ.
No, I always use this example.
This is very interesting.
He's on the path of Charlie Munger. Aditya Kondawar quote करके.
We should start a Twitter thread, no?
This funny example.
Aditya Kondawar quotes.
Basically, the thing is, finance now is all about some thumb rules.
Right.
So, अगर मैं यहाँ पे आगे thumb rules बोलूँगा तो audience will throw tomatoes at me. As simple as. You have to make it interesting.
Right.
Right. I would always talk to the audience in a way that I would,
right.
Connect the dots myself. Right. So I do it this way.
Right.
Really, यही है. But coming back to the topic, I think this is a very philosophical question, and only you can make yourself a very, I would say, acceptable to risk kind of an investor, and that will only happen with time, and that will only happen with patience.
Got it.
Because when you miss a few buses जहाँ पे आप correction आया, आपने सब बेच दिया, and you announce to the world that okay, I'm safe, and then the market rallies 2x from there, and then everybody abuses you, is when you learn कि okay, I should not have done that.
Yeah.
It will only happen with
that. As you were saying, मेरे को Reliance की याद आ रही है. There was this one particular point in time where it had almost dropped to 700, 800 something, and now is अभी हो गया. I think
yeah, split bonus,
2000
right,
plus
whatever
now.
it is. Yeah.
A lot of these big investors, they also suffer from these biases.
Right.
So a few days ago, I was talking to the nephew of Chandrakant Sampath. So Chandrakant Sampath is the OG. Even before Rakesh, he was sort of the guru of the Indian stock market. And how did he make his fortune? So essentially, he realized when Indira Gandhi compelled all of these multinationals to list in India, he went and grabbed all those stocks, as many as he could. And then he stuck with them. He stuck with them for decades, and they compounded like crazy. Nestle, Gillette, today's blue chips, I mean, have made his fortune. But in that process, he was offered shares in Reliance at the IPO. He refused because his bias was that multinationals have good corporate governance. ये बंदा पता नहीं क्या करेगा, I don't trust. So he avoided that. He lost out. Infosys, he had this thing that I don't understand tech stocks, so I will not touch Infosys. Infosys IPO also he missed. So a lot of these guys have had their own flaws, and so it's okay to make mistakes. It's only human.
Absolutely, you won't get everything right. So
fair. Well, I think it's. I think that would be the difference between a new investor and a seasoned investor, right? So pain लेने का नहीं ज़्यादा, tension लेने का नहीं ज़्यादा.
In fact, Neil mentioned this story, right? I just wanted to tell you another story. So my Nana, right? So he has been an IPO investor all his life for the past 35-40 years. So my sister was getting married in my mom's village, and my Nana was just talking to me. I never knew that he was an investor. So he opens his 50-year-old Godrej Almira, and he hands me this share certificate over a bundle.
Interesting.
So we were like, of course, we don't have so much time to pour through all of them, right? So he opens his notebook and he tells me all the IPOs that he has applied to and he still holds.
Wow.
So there were almost 170 IPOs that he applied to.
170
and 5
IPOs.
names stood out. One was Reliance, Motherson Sumi, NIIT, and 2 more IT companies. Not Infosys and all that, but he made crazy money.
Of course.
So like he said, I mean, and again to propagate that example, buy and hold works. And बाकी के सारे companies तो almost उड़ चुकी है या फिर उसका आता पता नहीं है.
Ramesh, forget it. Aditya is giving us the party.
Of course. अभी तो हो गया, plan change है.
So investing में is like that only.
Nothing less than Marriott will do.
Of course.
So investing is like that only. If you have a portfolio of 30 stocks, 2-3 stocks are going to make everything for you. 15-17 are going to be average, and 2-3 तो एकदम कचरा हो जाएंगे. Law of average basically.
So basically the power law applies to public markets and those investments as well. Interesting.
So you're going to get it wrong for sure.
अभी IPO का सवाल निकला है, तो begs me to ask the question. IPO का season चल रहा है वापस. There's a lot of IPOs which are coming out. Do you think it's a good season, bad season?
See, before answering that question, you have to get to the fundamental reasons for an IPO, right? Assuming you have a company, right? You are the promoter of a company, you're selling your shares, you would want the best valuation for it.
Of course.
Right? So that's why number one, IPOs always come when the markets are doing very well. Because liquidity is very high, and market ka euphoria is also at an all-time high. People subscribe to anything. In fact, there is a main board jewelry IPO that is going on, and the promoters are involved in a betting scam. And the IPO has been subscribed 3 times already.
Interesting.
Wow. So people again, they treat IPOs as a lottery ticket.
You got a new story, no?
Yeah.
Quote नहीं दूंगा मैं बस.
Quote क्या भी on record आ गया कैमरा पे.
ठीक है. नाम नहीं लिया ना मैंने. So IPOs are all about पागलपंती. It's all about euphoria. IPO, I don't say initial public offering. I say it's probably overpriced. Right. So
ये भी repeat करो.
So IPO, I say that is probably overpriced. I don't say it's initial public offering.
Got it.
Very few companies such as say a D-Mart or a BSC, they actually left a lot of value on the table. Right. So you have to. So whenever an IPO comes, I'm happy not for the fact that I can make my 15,000 to 30,000, which I used to do during college days. Right. But when an IPO comes, they file a DRHP. So DRHP को मैं actually company की कुंडली बोलता हूँ. Because it tells you everything about the company that is there. Management, financials, history, industry overview, peers. So whatever you need to know about the company is in that 500-page document. So if you can just spend 2 hours on that document now.
Just 500 pages.
So, of course, 500 pages is a lot, I know. But even if you spend say an hour or 2 hours.
Are there any specific sections which we should look for?
So you look at the management, you look at the financials, आप business के बारे में पढ़ो. See, IPO में ना 15,000 के बारे में मत सोचो. You think about the knowledge that you can gain from that prospectus.
Got it.
And there will come a time when actually a good promoter like Mr. Damani comes around, and this is not a recommendation, comes around and says and comes up with his IPO with a lot of value left on the table. You should subscribe to that IPO and keep it for the long term.
Got it.
आप ही सोचो अगर डीमार्ट का IPO 300 का आपने 600 पे बेच दिया होता, you would have missed that 5x, 6x or 7x rally.
Of course.
So always look at the big picture, always and always. Even in the case of IPOs, look at the long picture. ठीक है, you would think that अरे मैंने 200 पेज पढ़ा, people would abuse me कि यार इसने बोला था DRHP पढ़ने के लिए कुछ फायदा तो हुआ नहीं, right? But at least you gain that knowledge, right?
Right.
See, knowledge is like energy. Once created, it can't be destroyed. Right. एक form से दूसरे form में जाएगा. कभी ना कभी तो आपको काम आएगा. Knowledge never goes to waste.
So Prathamesh, I'll just make one more point about IPOs.
Yes.
A lot of us have family stories, just like Aditya was saying, that our parents got allotment and it's been phenomenal.
Yes.
But a big issue to remember is that there was until early 90s something called the controller of capital issues.
Okay.
And they would it was a government body that would fix the IPO price.
Okay.
So getting an allotment in those days was actually a lottery because it was not easy to get allotment.
Right.
Now with book building, the IPO prices are a lot more.
Okay.
It takes into account a lot more valuation. So it's no longer the kind of lottery it used to be.
Okay. Interesting. But why did they stop having this kind of system then?
It was artificial, no? It was part of the license quota Raj mentality.
Achha.
Why not let the market decide what the IPO price should be?
Got
So CCI used to say कि भाई तुम 10 रुपए पे लाओ, तुम 20 रुपए पे लाओ. So Colgate Palmolive, ITC, ये सब I think they only fixed कि you should go IPO at 10 rupees only.
Got it.
In fact, like Neil said, a lot of these IPO applications were stuffed upon distributors.
Okay.
They used to in fact crib that अरे मेरे को HUL ने अपना IPO का ये दे दिया, and of course now they would be saying something else only, but yeah.
Of course. Interesting. But when you were making all of these points, there were a couple of, again, factors which were standing out. So you talked about the black swan events, you talked about COVID. So typically these are your macroeconomic factors, right? Global level पे क्या चल रहा है, national level पे क्या चल रहा है, and how is it affecting our markets? I'm sure you've researched RJ enough to know what was his perspective on macroeconomics, how he thought about macroeconomics, and the question is, did he make his investment decisions based on these macroeconomic trends or factors?
At times he did, very strongly so.
Okay.
So one early example is the 1990 budget, which was under VP Singh.
Right.
And Madhu Dandavate was the finance minister, socialist.
Okay.
A lot of pessimism in the market. And Rakesh took a contrary view, a very large contrary view, and it paid off massively. The market rallied after that.
Right. This was right before the 91
Just
liberation?
before Manmohan Singh and Narasimha Rao.
Okay.
So that was probably a smaller rally than the one that followed. But he got that right, and that was one of his initial bets. Then in 2002, he wrote an article in Economic Times setting out his long-term belief that now India has turned a corner and now is the time to go long in a very big way.
Right.
And there was no real reason, if you think about it, nothing major had happened in 2002, 2003 for anyone to form that. But for some reason he did, and he acted on it. So, and then afterwards, a lot of his interviews, he kind of reinforces this very strong India belief, invest in India. A lot of us share that now, but if you think 10, 20 years ago, very few of us did.
Yes. I think at that point of time, everybody was very pessimistic. And it was actually also claimed to be one of the reasons of this huge brain drain that we saw, right? So I remember from my engineering batch, there's hardly a handful which stayed back. Everybody from my batch has either moved to US or Europe, mostly these two countries. Aditya, coming back to you, what do you think was RJ's view of macroeconomics, how it influenced his investment decisions?
I think again, coming back to RJ's style, I think he saw the country as a company and the finance minister or the prime minister as a promoter, as simple as that. He subscribed to their vision, like Neil said. And see, again, when we talk about RJ, right, he is like a 1 in a billion or a 1 in a trillion case.
Right.
Because, whatever he did from the beginning, right, those actions made sure that he was successful. He took leverage, he went short, he went long, he took contra calls, and all of it played out.
Right.
Without any fundamental backing as such.
Right.
If someone asks me today to define India as a stock or as a bird's eye view, I can tell him very confidently that okay, everything is good, everything is positive, you can go long on the markets. But उस time पे ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं था.
Right.
Right. So again, that tells you the risk-taking appetite of RJ.
Right.
You know, because going against the whole market, the whole country, and you know, taking up such a abnormal position was a very big risk in itself, and it played out.
Right.
Right. So there's no reason as such. I mean, honestly, I can't tell you that okay, this was the budget, ये allocation था, वो allocation था. Nothing like that, honestly.
Right. It was just simply कि India grow होने वाला है, so let's bet on India.
And you have to also give weight. You also have to give credit to him because you know, like I gave you the Titan example, right? He told that 16% जब margin जाएगा तब बेचना पड़ेगा.
Right.
And it was spot on. मतलब वो reach हुआ. And he
Right.
said that you know Titan is just into gold today. It will get into other categories. And then you look at Titan today. They got into sarees, perfumes. You know, it has become a very consumer-facing brand. You know, Tata की सबसे well-known brand today is Titan.
Right. True.
So,
True.
Yeah, I mean.
Interesting.
A slightly off-track example. So I was in the recent annual unit holders meeting of Parag Parikh Mutual
Okay.
Fund, and their CIO Rajiv Thakkar, he was asked a question that how do you really price a stock, right? You should be able to get it exactly right on an Excel sheet, right? There is a whole formula, discounted cash flow. You're supposed to get all the variables right, and he said that so much of it is future value, which you make a tiny change in your assumptions and suddenly the future value in your calculations will change massively. So
Yes.
it's not important that you're an Excel wizard and you get those exact numbers right. You just have to be right on the broad trend, the broad direction of that
Right.
company.
Got it.
In fact, I had tweeted this one and Rajiv Thakkar had liked this tweet. I had written that you know the best magicians are not found in circuses; they are found in the investment world.
Interesting.
Because Excel pay, there's so much manipulation happening. And like Neil said, right? You know, you change the returns from say 6% to 10%, and everything changes.
Of course.
Right. So promoter को खुद को ही नहीं पता धंधे में क्या होने वाला है एक हफ्ते बाद. आप कैसे एक AC रूम में बैठ के behind an Excel screen forecast.
Right.
Right. So, like I was alluding to earlier, right? You know, you have, मतलब investing is 40% taking care of the variables and बाकी 60% भगवान का नाम लेके जो होगा वो होगा. Because anything can happen, right?
Of
So
course.
yeah,
Of course.
a lot of it is left on luck and chance. So yeah.
Of course. But then again, that begs me to ask this question because if you look at right now, right? So our current reality is everybody's talking about how India is the next big market and next big thing, and we are getting so much of geopolitical clout,
Yeah.
and we are signing deals left, right, and center, and all these big companies are now wanting to invest in India.
Yeah.
So of course, there is this strong sentiment and strong support in the India's growth story. But how do you think it's going to play out over the next, say, 20 years or 30 years? And if I have to make long-term investments, long-term bets, how do I think about what is happening in India right now?
It worries the hell out of me.
Okay.
Because if you think about China, right, 5 years ago, could you have possibly imagined the kind of state they would be in today?
True.
There was so much bullishness, right? They were the next big thing competing with the United States. Their market right now is at the level that it was in 2007.
Yes.
More than a decade of no returns.
Yeah. I think Hong Kong also is.
Hang
somewhere
Seng,
near.
which is very
Right.
linked to
Somewhere
China.
near.
Similar. Sorry, I meant Hang Seng actually, but
Okay.
China and Hong
Very
Kong is
closely linked. Yeah.
closely
Right.
linked. It is sheer luck that we are where we are.
Okay.
A lot of things can go wrong. So I think a sensible investment strategy will be diversified geographically. There will be some money in US tech stocks, some
Okay.
money in various global multinationals. It's the sensible way of doing it.
Interesting. And what would be your view on this?
So I will disagree with Neil, and he knows that this answer was coming. So see, number one, people are saying that markets are at an all-time high, right? So let me take the case of Nifty.
Yes.
Okay. If Nifty were a stock, it's priced at 22,000 today, and its earnings per share is going to be 1,000 rupees this year,
Okay.
and it's going to be 1,100 next year.
Okay.
Mota moti 19-20 times pay you're getting the Indian markets, right? But at the same time, you have to also you have to also know the fact that you know when you talk about a recession, you talk about geopolitical instability, you talk about political instability, you talk about certain legacy issues that are plaguing some of these countries, right? It can be anything: monetary, ganda monetary policy, ganda fiscal policy, whatever. I mean, when you score India on all of these parameters, right? We take it off as a good way. Because
Right.
our monetary policy is working well. You know, our governor has been very good.
Yes.
Our external reserves are very good. Our GDP growth has come in well. Our inflation is cooling down. A lot of industries are shifting to India. Of course, we can't celebrate yet, but it's in the step is in the right direction.
Right.
And you have to also understand that India has never had one philosophy, one ideology for the longest time. So I think this is for the first time that the third term is starting for Mr. Modi, right?
May start.
I mean, yet to start, but it's going to come. So कैसा है कि when you have the same promoter for a lot of years, right? He can bring in good changes.
Right.
Again, I'm not a BJP nationalist or all of that, but I'm just generally saying, when you boil down India to a stock, right? A lot of good things are working for us. But at the same time, we have to understand that whenever we talk about India, we talk about the demographic advantage, right?
Right.
We have to the government has to just ensure that this demographic advantage does not turn into a disaster, जहाँ पे crores of youth are left jobless and all that. But again, I think that manufacturing sector can take care of it, or a lot of other sectors can take care of it. So how do you actually play it? I mean, like I said before, you can go long on India. We will reach a size of $7-8 trillion. अगर 7% पे grow हो रहे हैं, तो it will take the next 10 years.
Okay.
And what really happens in this process is that when the economy doubles, right, the allied sectors will not just double. It will more than double. So आपका manufacturing can become 5x, financial services can become 4x, because credit is the backbone of the economy.
Right.
So my, humble suggestion to you, to every retail investor would be just not to time the market, but just get in. You can't time the markets as such. But at the same time, be careful, of what you pay. Like I said before, Maruti के लिए Ferrari का price मत pay करना.
Right.
So yeah.
उल्टा करना है.
उल्टा करना है.
Yeah. So in fact, just one note on Aditya's Nifty valuation. So that is true of the Nifty. But if you see the mid and small cap index, the multiples there are really, really high.
Right.
And we've done a whole story on why you should be cautious there. The other thing is that it's not about, so I would not say time the market, but diversification is a no-brainer, right?
Right.
You don't know which country will take, will speed up in the next 5-10 years. It may be India, it may not be India. Our jobs are here, our lives are here, so we are going to benefit anyway.
Right.
Some part of our money, if it's globally diversified, it just protects us.
Right. Interesting. But then again, you mentioned mid caps, small caps, you mentioned manufacturing. In this entire India growth story, even from the government point of view, they've made a lot of announcements in PLI and manufacturing investments, so on and so forth. Do you think that is one theme which is going to be stronger in this next few period?
See, the way I see it, manufacturing gross value added to the economy today is somewhere close to $170-200 billion. I'm not sure of the number.
Okay.
The way I see it is going to go up to $1 trillion.
Okay.
When India reaches say $7 trillion or $8 trillion economy, because our domestic demand itself is so strong. And if you actually look at the news flow and the announcements that some of our domestic companies are making, right? So Nokia ke liye, Motorola ke liye, the biggest export orders are being made in India, in Sri City in Andhra Pradesh. Right?
Yes.
So they're exporting from here.
Right.
So the way I see it, yes, it's a good step. But again, like I said, enough jobs have to be created so that it does not turn into a disadvantage.
Right.
And like what Neil was alluding to earlier, small cap, mid cap index is expensive, but again, you can, of course, retail investors can't, they can't cherry pick, but again, they can just do a SIP in Nifty 50, which still holds a lot of value.
Right.
And small cap, mid cap ka bhi time aayega, so that can again be gotten into maybe whenever they feel comfortable. So for example, I think the mid cap and small cap index are trading at 24, 27, 28 times, right? Which is expensive, no doubt about it.
What is a healthier range?
I think maybe below 20.
Okay.
Right. But again, not a recommendation to get into that exact same point. Because it can very well happen that I can get into that index today, it may underperform for 3 years, but when the time comes, it may outperform.
Right.
And it can again get back to its own mean reversion.
Right.
So average return hai, uspeh wapas aa jayega wo.
Okay.
So whenever you invest, right, like I was telling the case of HUL or Reliance, right, there will be periods when you underperform a lot. And then outperformance will come and the mean reversion happens.
Right.
So for me, honestly, even today, I would get into a mid cap, I would get into a large cap, because I have a very long term view.
Right.
अगर आपके पास छोटा सा view है, if you have a 3-year or 5-year view, then you have to cherry pick. कि चलो ये valuation basis पे ये cheap है, तो this has a good margin of safety given my time horizon.
Right.
ठीक है. For me, I'm indifferent because I'm here till my last breath. So yeah.
Right. Got it. But then again, this begs me to ask this question. So let's reverse this, right? Just to for me to understand how to make that investment decision.
Yeah.
We started with कि चलो India का long story तो है.
Yeah.
ठीक है. There are these n number of factors which are working in favor. you are, of course, we should err on the side of caution. That's your point of view, which I completely agree. But then if we have to break it down to actual investment decisions which I can make today, कि चलो India long story है अगले 20 साल 30 साल के लिए, how do I go about it? How do I break it down to कि चलो ये long story में I should identify these themes,
so
these
2-3
sectors.
things that you need to take care of. Number 1, आपके पास खुद का टाइम है. Number 2, आपका risk taking capability क्या है? And number 3, what is the amount?
Right.
If you have say 5 to 10,000 rupees to forego with every month for the next 15-20 years,
right.
Like Neil said, best is SIP in an index fund.
Okay.
ठीक है, 15 साल बाद अपने बच्चों को दे दो,
okay.
वो आपको आपकी तारीफ करेंगे, all set, ठीक है.
Okay.
दूसरा, so this is the best option when you don't have any time and you don't know anything about markets.
Okay.
ठीक है, so you are putting your investment in autopilot mode.
Okay.
Number 2 is when you have some time and you want to have a say in the kind of strategy that you want to put your money in. Assuming that I'm bullish on infrastructure, ठीक है. So I would maybe go into a manufacturing fund जहाँ पे कुछ pharma companies है, कुछ electronic manufacturing companies है. Again, not a recommendation, guys. तो कैसा है कि then you can actively select that fund for a period of say 3, 5, 7 years, unless and until the economy does not double. ठीक है. And again, third, which is a subset of number 2, you have a larger capital to forego with. Now, for example, AIFs में कैसा है कि AIF can be done by people who are investment banking के top honchos or who work in Big Four. ठीक है, by virtue of their law or regulations of the investment bank or the audit firm, they can only do an AIF.
Okay.
ठीक है, so they can go with an AIF option or they can go with an PMS option. Again, यहाँ पे कैसा है कि when you become an active kind of investor, you have to make sure that the person that you are entrusting your money with, you know, आप दोनों के thoughts काफी align होते हैं.
Right.
So, like I said, you know, we are very simple kind of investors. You know, we pick themes, we pick stocks. We maybe sometimes try to meet the management. We do plant visits. We have a long-term vision, and then we and our clients align on that fact, right? So, आप PMS भी कर सकते हो.
Got it.
So I have given you 3 options. You can do anything. And if you are, say, if you're a daredevil, you have the time, you have the resources, you are ready to see a 99% drawdown on your stocks, go for direct equity. आप research करो और खुद stocks लो. But again, that's a long-drawn process जहाँ पे you will make a lot of mistakes, but that will make you a better investor. See, हर option के अपने pros and cons हैं.
Of course.
ठीक है. I chose the 4th path because I wanted to research stocks that gives me a kick. I like to meet promoters, I like to do plant visits. जब double triple होता है stock तो मजा आता है. ठीक है, तो I mean, see, I'm human after all, right? So I'm telling you whatever it is unfiltered. So whatever option suits you, do that. See, if you don't have time, if you don't have the capital, don't go in the 4th option. जहाँ पे you know, your boss will also give you sleepless nights and your portfolio P&L will also give you sleepless nights.
Yes.
ठीक है, so do whatever comforts you, as simple as that.
Got it. Got it. So I think this relates to one thing which I personally believe in a lot. See, as a student of decision making, I now have come to a point where I don't think I cannot judge that this is a good decision, this is a bad decision, this is a wrong decision, this is a right decision. Because what is right for me may not be right for you.
Exactly.
What is good for you may not be good for me. So all of it is subjective. And ultimately then I reached to this conclusion that, okay, we need to finalize the consequences we want first and then make choices accordingly. Exactly. If I'm happy with a 10% return, then I have these set of choices. If I want to chase 20% return, these are the set of choices. If I want to chase say 30%, 40% return, these are the choices in front of me. So I think it makes sense and it kind of connects to what you said also. पहले decide करो कि आपको क्या चाहिए और उसके हिसाब से फिर choices लो.
आप क्या हो, आपको क्या चाहिए, आपको कैसे चाहिए, you decide that yourself first.
Right.
ठीक है, you can't be running around after people thinking अरे इसने अडानी stocks में ले लिया, इसने इतना पैसा कमाया तो मैं भी अडानी stock ले लेता हूँ. Right. You can't do that. Right. You know, you have to give your own strategies, मतलब खुद का time देना पड़ता है वो strategy को भी, right? Because it may very well happen that those stocks can go down and your strategy will outperform his. Right. So like I said, you know, you are your own worst enemy. Right. So you catch on a strategy, you give it time, see how it pans out, and then you can always make tweaks to it. Right. So I was a value investor, I became a growth investor. ठीक है, so I'm a mix of both. Okay. So take the case of Warren Buffett, सबसे best. You know, he was all into all typical old age stocks. ठीक है, Burlington Roadways, Seas Candies, Coca-Cola. I think he was heavy on insurance companies also. Insurance, yeah. The first company that he bought was insurance company, right? तो उसके बाद कैसा हुआ कि he missed the whole rally of tech stocks, right? And everybody ridiculed him, right? The same happened during COVID when what's her name, Cathy Wood, ARK ETF,
Yes.
right? So there was a very beautiful graph जहाँ पे Berkshire Hathaway का performance ऐसा था, ARK ETF का performance ऐसा था, and post COVID it went below Berkshire and Berkshire went up.
Interesting.
See, when people talk about investments, right, they always talk about return. They don't talk about longevity.
Right.
See, 25% CAGR for 5 years and 18% CAGR for 30-35 years. You know, the resultant figure is going to be crazy.
Monumentally different.
So longevity has to be given a lot of weight, right? You're not here for 2-3 years. You're here for 15, 20, 25, 30 years.
Right.
But Warren Buffett is the prime example of what longevity does to you. You know,
Right.
Like Neil
Most
said.
of his fortune came after the age
Yeah.
of 50 or something.
Yeah.
So he made his first billion at the age of 56. 64 pe he was worth $10 billion, and abhi he is worth $118 billion. So the first billion took him 44-45 years.
Right.
And then see what happened.
But then again, the popular argument here becomes कि यार इतना लेट पैसा मिलेगा तो करूँगा क्या उसका?
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I absolutely agree. See, you don't have to be a miser for it.
Right.
See, I'm not of the camp that would say that Starbucks मत पियो,
Right.
iPhone मत लो. मैं खुद iPhone use करता हूँ, मैं खुद Starbucks जाता हूँ. See, मुझे नहीं पता कल क्या होने वाला है, right? I want to enjoy my life. I don't want to be a miser. I have
Right.
done that as well. ठीक है,
Right.
when I was in a financially weak position, I saved everything, I invested everything.
Right.
उसका भी अपना अलग मजा था. But now I have seen that, I have seen this, so I know that balanced way is the best way to do it because I have to do this for 30 years.
Right.
See, when you become a miser in doing something, you won't do the process wholeheartedly and for a very long period of time.
Right.
और आपको तो यही boring चीज decade after decade करनी है. So make sure
Right.
that you enjoy the process,
Right.
right? So for example, so I use a lot of fitness and investing analogies, right? So I go for a run. So I don't go for a run every day at the same place, right? I mix it up. मैं कभी
Right.
बालेवाड़ी स्टेडियम जाऊँगा, कभी कोरेगांव पार्क जाऊँगा, कभी जिम में जाऊँगा. I'll lift weights sometimes. So I have to make it fun.
Right.
You know, I have to do the same boring thing day in and मतलब हर सुबह मुझे वो एक boring चीज करना है तो might as well spice things up, right?
Right.
So that the core philosophy is the same or the core action is the same.
Right. I think it makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. Interesting. Zooming out, coming back to the book, one question to both of you individually.
Yeah.
In your view, what were the 3 big hits of RJ and what were the 3 worst mistakes of RJ?
So actually that is documented in the second part of our book, and Aditya kind of wrote all of that entirely by himself.
Interesting.
So I'll let him take that one.
Sure.
So his 3 big hits were Crisel, Lupin and Titan.
Okay.
And his 3 misses were DHFL, A2Z and Mandana Retail Ventures.
Okay.
I mean, how do I put it? I mean, most of the stocks that he picked were with the same core philosophy, you know. I mean, it was typical RJ style, you know. He would go out all guns blazing, promoter ko milke aayenge, and then he would be like, okay, I'm sold on the promoter's vision. So see, Titan and all everybody knows about. So let me talk about Titan and let me talk about say DHFL.
Okay.
दोनों के बारे में बात करता हूँ because these were the biggest gainers and biggest losers. for him.
Done.
So Titan में कैसा था कि Neil and Aparajita had actually chased down this lead and they found out that RJ actually held Titan from the 90s era, if I'm
Okay.
not wrong, right? So this was something that no one knew.
Okay.
And उसके बाद 2002-2003 was when one of his broker friends had called RJ saying that, you know, Titan is trading at 35 rupees and Morgan Stanley is selling at 31-32 rupees.
Okay.
So do you want to buy it? So RJ calls up his friend and he asks him and he's like, अरे नहीं Morgan Stanley तो तेरे घर पे बेच के जाएगा 24-25 में. And RJ is like, you know, just to hell with this guy, I'll still buy.
Okay.
So he bought the stock, थोड़ा ऊपर गया stock, and then he thought कि चलो let me go and meet the new MD. He went and met the new MD. You know, he was sold on his vision, and he then doubled down on the stock.
Okay.
In fact, during the great financial crisis, the stock had corrected from 1400 to 600, and still he held on to the stock.
Wow.
I think he did not add, but he held on to the position.
Okay.
And he was always very vocal about the stock. You know, he always said कि you know, this is the category that they will get into. EBITDA margin ये होगा. Indians are very ambitious. They are going to spend a lot on these discretionary products, right? Then DHFL, it was a very funny story because he met Kapil Wadhwa on a flight, and they just got talking, and Kapil Wadhwa told that, you know, his father started the company so that people could afford their house, could build a house at affordable home prices. तब ये प्रधानमंत्री की कोई स्कीम नहीं थी अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग की, ठीक है, एंड इन जनरल थोड़े प्रॉपर्टी प्राइसेस भी कम ही थे. अगेन ही गॉट सोल्ड ऑन द स्टोरी, ही मेट मिस्टर वाधवा अगेन, डबल डाउन ऑन हिज पोजीशन. इनफैक्ट 2018 में जब IL&FS क्राइसिस आया तो ही केम ऑन टीवी एंड ही अनाउंस दैट मैं ये स्टॉक ले रहा हूँ. there's nothing wrong with the stock. But of course we know what happened with DHFL.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very good example because people would of course blame RJ ki bhai, this great personality made a mistake. But I think it also tells us the human side of these great investors.
Yes.
Because a lot of retail investors try to clone their portfolios.
Yes.
हमें तो पता चल जाता है when they buy, but when they sell or when they're selling, right, we don't know.
Right.
So let me get into the nitty-gritty of it. Assuming that someone holds say a 5% equity stake in a company, right? If they slowly start selling the company,
right.
0% पे लेके आते हैं या 1% के नीचे लेके आते हैं, their name will not come in the shareholding pattern.
Yes.
And that is how you would know after a lag of 3 months or whatever the quarterly filing period is, कि they have already sold out the position.
Yes.
Right. So
और उसमें भी कितना बेचा है पता नहीं चलेगा.
आपको पता चल जाएगा, exact पता नहीं चलेगा.
Right.
Because assuming that RJ had a position of say 5% in a company.
Right.
So it can very well happen that his stake now in the company is 0.99% or 0%. Because 1% के ऊपर ही नाम आता है हमेशा.
Okay.
Right. So we have written that in the book as well, that don't try to clone the celebrity portfolios, right, as they are widely called in the market,
Yes.
right. Every move of theirs is widely tracked. In fact, Rakesh Jhunjhunwala की तो fan website भी है, it's called rakeshjhunjhunwala.in.
Okay.
And they talk about his stocks extensively.
Okay.
Right. So we have written that as in the book as well. You frame your own strategy. In the long run, it will serve you very well.
Right.
And that's about it.
Interesting. You mentioned there was this story which you chased down leading to 1990s.
Yeah, so
What was
it
that
was
about?
actually an article that a Titan executive wrote in Hindu Business Line,
Okay.
saying that he was there actually since the 90s. And Titan was going nowhere.
Okay.
Back then, Titan was focused on watches. It
Okay.
was trying to export to Europe. They had a foray which also was going nowhere. And then they made this big pivot to jewelry. So he held it through those dark days and saw the turnaround and then doubled down on it.
Okay. Interesting.
No, the
Very
Titan
interesting.
story is extremely interesting. I think the promoters themselves were not so bullish on the company how much he was.
Interesting.
Because
But
Titan has gone through a lot of dark phases. So they forayed into the European Union to export jewelry because Forex was very tough to come by. And the government told them कि तुम अपना देख लो.
Okay.
Get your own Forex, we can't provide you.
Okay.
So they failed miserably over there, wrapped it up, they came back here and then they got into newer categories. But like Neil said, he held on to the position for so
Right.
much. Almost 3 decades now, right?
But I think having the backing of someone like a Rakesh Jhunjhunwala would have helped the team as well to get through those bad periods.
I think that time it wasn't that much well known that RJ is such a big investor and RJ wasn't really vocal about Titan. I think he was more on the sidelines that time.
Okay.
But I think over the past 7-8 years he was quite vocal when it came to Titan. He used to come on the con calls and he used to thrash Bhaskar Bhatt and other executives. In fact, I remember a call very distinctly. It was Q1 of FY18, so almost 5 years back.
Okay.
Where he said that you have reduced the dividend and हम जैसे गरीब लोगों का क्या होगा अगर आप dividend कम कर दोगे तो. And I still remember the whole equity research floor started laughing because अगर वो गरीब है तो फिर हम लोग कौन है?
Right. Interesting.
So it was very funny.
Interesting. You also mentioned one more thing during one of those answers, that RJ also made a lot of money by shorting the market.
I think Neil would be best placed to answer that.
Yeah. So कितना पैसा बनाया shorting में और क्या होता है shorting?
वो सब हमने नहीं लिखा है कितना कमाया shorting में.
So unfortunately there is no way of knowing that. So before that I'll explain what shorting is, which is that you benefit from prices falling.
Right.
Now in the 90s he took bearish positions, especially during the Harshad Mehta bull run. So initially he was bullish and then he turned bearish.
Okay.
But at that point there are no public records of exactly how much money he made.
Okay.
So your guess is as good as mine.
Okay.
It's only from the early 2000s that we have those 1% shareholder registers coming up and you can document his portfolio growing quarter by quarter.
Okay. But was it that only period, early 90s wala? बाद में he never shorted?
He would have, but by then trading became less and less significant for him.
Okay. No, because I was worrying that if he is making money shorting the market, why is he still called the big bull?
So he has a dedicated team now. I think he has it from the past 1.5 decades, Rare Enterprises mein, which takes care of the both buy and sell legs.
Okay.
So it's very off hands now for him. Because like Neil said, I think all this shorting, all this daredevil moves actually took a big toll on his health as well. So he was majority into investing then.
Got it.
Cool. I think that pretty much wraps up your book as well in terms of what points have been covered. Last couple of concluding questions. If I'm a layman and I'm just getting into the world of investing, what are the lessons which I can learn from RJ in terms of what I should do and also what I shouldn't do?
So, I mean, his biggest lesson that you can emulate is the bullishness on India. It's not easy, especially for a person like me. I'm pessimistic. I am a believer in geographic diversification. So all of that stops me from following that fully.
Okay.
But certainly it paid off for him in a very, very big way. The other is, of course, his long-term horizon. So the Titan thing is a great example. He begins in the 90s, holds for 2.5 decades. If you think back to our own portfolios, I don't know how long we've held our oldest stock or mutual fund, but that's something that definitely works.
Got it. And what should we not learn from him?
You want to take that?
Yeah. So as we have written in the book, right, number one, don't take outsized bets like him, number one. And in fact, it's very funny that the big bull himself used to come on TV and used to tell people that don't clone me, get into mutual funds. Now that's the best way for you to play on India, right? And number two, I think is not to use leverage, because I think, like I said, Mr. Jhunjhunwala's example is like 1 in a billion or 1 in a trillion, in fact.
Right.
Because whatever he did worked out very well for him. अगर उसमें से एक भी चीज उल्टा हो जाती तो he would have been bankrupt. आज RJ नहीं होते maybe, मतलब we would have been speaking about him so well, right? And what else? I think third one would be to take care of your health, maybe. Yeah.
Does it matter really? Does it change your financial decisions? Your
Absolutely. अगर आप खुद ही नहीं हो पैसा एंजॉय करने के लिए तो फिर क्या फायदा? Might as well just do YOLO investing. You only live once. जो है सब उड़ा दो.
True. That is even
right. So it's compounding of the extreme nature, right? When you take care of your health, you can actually be around to take care of that wealth.
Right.
अगर आपकी life expectancy 40 साल की है तो then why save so much and why invest so much? Right.
Fair
you have to live still 70, 80, 90 तो पैसा भी है.
Fair enough.
उस हिसाब से. I'm not saying that he did not live his life. He lived his life king size. I mean,
there were a lot of stories about his extravagant parties, right?
Yeah. I think, honestly, he was someone that did not mince his words. Even when he met the honorable prime minister, unki shirt crumpled thi, everyone was making fun of him. But that was something that I really liked, because he was himself.
Right.
In fact, there's a very famous interview, not a famous interview, but an interview hai जिसमें he was speaking to the TV guys, CNBC पे, and then his broker calls in, he's like, हाँ कल्पेश भेज दे, in the middle of this thing.
Interesting.
Interview. So he was very himself. He loved his friends and family. We have a lot of stories, can't disclose it.
Right.
He enjoyed his life. He took care of his loved ones.
Right.
In fact, CRISIL ka share he sold out a good stake in between so that his family has a good house.
Okay.
Because until that point of time, they did not even have a AC at their house.
Right.
So his wife used to pester him, "Yaar, tum itna paisa kama rahe ho to."
So everyone draws this example that if he had left that money in CRISIL shares, it would have compounded so much more. But of course, at some point, you need to spend the money.
Right. I think it's a very stupid argument that people make. That's his personal choice. यार मतलब people can live on rent, people can live in their own house. That's their own personal thing. अभी share certificate का घर बना के तो रह नहीं सकता ना वो.
Of course.
South Mumbai में.
Of course.
So whatever he liked, he did it. As simple as that. I did not give a damn about what others thought. So yeah.
Right. But it still makes good content for Twitter, right? Dissing people.
Like I was saying, whatever is controversial, it will get a lot of likes. So, yeah.
Interesting. One last question. I started this conversation with the question about why did you decide to write about RJ? The final question is, throughout this entire process of writing a book about him, what was that one moment which actually changed your life as well? It may be a part of the book, it may not be a part of the book, it may be about you three working together on this story. But what was your favorite moment in this entire journey of writing this book?
For me, it was finding out about his mistakes, because there was this whole image built in my mind, and the media builds it, of which I'm part, that he was this godlike figure.
Yeah, right.
And when you realize he's only human, he's made a ton of mistakes. It's okay to make your own mistakes. That really helped me along.
Interesting. You?
So for me, I think while we were on the journey of writing the book, we went. So Neil and Aprajita interviewed a lot of people at AIR, his circle. We even went to Joffrey's, right? So we just wanted to soak in the environment where he sat every day, every night. So we were just speaking with the waiter. We sat at the exact same spot that RJ used to sit. Very expensive place, by the way.
Okay.
So you know, we were just speaking to the waiter कि you know what मतलब कि कैसे थे वो, क्या पीते थे, क्या खाते थे, लोगों के साथ कैसे थे. तो he used to be like black label पीते थे. First he used to eat a lot of fried food, then he switched over to peanuts and boiled eggs.
Okay.
Right. So his go-to drink and meal was 2 black labels and 2 boiled eggs.
Okay.
Because he was taking care of his health. And then we just, I think
not very appetizing, right?
I think Neil asked him कि यहाँ पे क्या average tip है and RJ कितने देते थे. So he was like average tip over here is so the highest tip over here is 7-8K.
Okay.
The average tip is like 5-6K. After which we seriously doubted our career choices.
Right.
And then we were like RJ कितना tip देते थे. He told us that he used to tip like 2-3K, not a lot like other Joffrey's people.
Right.
And then we thought to ourselves that he was a value investor there as well. So that's my favorite story. There are a lot of stories that sadly won't make it to the headlines, but he did a lot of philanthropic stuff.
Right.
So our first book launch was in April, right, in Bombay. So Mr. Nilesh Shah was the opening speaker for the event, and he told us a lot of stories.
Okay.
Right. So he used to sponsor a lot of education for people. He built hostels, and he made sure that his name came nowhere. So he was a silent donor as well to a lot of good things. And just writing this book, saying it in reality, people coming to us for signing books. I mean, it's all a very surreal experience. I think the book also became a bestseller. I think honestly हमने तो इतना कभी expect नहीं किया था.
Okay.
Right? It's getting converted into 3 more languages.
क्या बात है, बहुत बढ़िया.
So I mean, it has been a grateful journey,
and we were surprised we got the Marathi rights mail first, then we got Gujarati.
Yeah, exactly. I think that was
That's
even more fulfilling for both of us because we both are Marathis.
Interesting.
And my dad keeps pestering me कि तू मराठी में कुछ करता नहीं है. So I told him कि देखो मराठी में आ रही है.
So and are these different languages getting published?
So Marathi is already out. It's published.
Nice.
So Marathi, Gujarati is already published. Hindi
okay.
one is coming, I believe.
Yeah.
Hindi and Bengali is also coming.
Very nice.
So yeah, definitely a very fulfilling journey. I think when I look back, last 15 months, right from when we started out to when we published the book, I think it has been a very fulfilling journey. Made me a better writer because your Aprajit was a journalist hai. So in fact, I used to trouble them a lot, and they were very gracious to help me.
Right.
So very thankful to both of them as well. So yeah.
Very nice. Very interesting. Audience से ले ले थोड़े questions.
Absolutely.
पवन आएगा. पवन audience slides लो तो please एक बार. Thank you. Anybody questions? If you have, please feel free to ask.
And before you ask, thank you for your patience.
Yes,
thank you for coming and thank you for your patience.
Behind the scenes आपको एक थोड़ा चस्का भी मिल गया होगा. YouTube पे कम दिखता है. YouTube पे इतना सब कुछ दिखता नहीं है पीछे वाला. But yes, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
And how do you guys invest? Like, just tell us a bit more about what are the things that you guys do. I'm a journalist, so I end up asking the question.
I'll go. So basically, I directly invest, like no mutual funds, like what you suggested. But in a similar staggered fashion. Whenever, like what they said, whenever I have money, I invest. Irrespective of the levels. At times, I am cautious of the levels. Like these 2 months, I haven't invested, but don't know if it's right or wrong. We'll know.
And how do you pick your stocks?
I like same like core competency, like which whatever I understand. Most of my stocks are like B2C. Like I don't even understand B2B, so just like consumer side, whatever I consume, whatever I can see.
FMCG. Right?
Yeah, not FMCG, but like just to like we are not on camera. Like my recommendation won't matter anywhere. So yeah, like stocks like Bajaj Finance, DMart, and like more of the conservative side. I enjoy like being stable on the long haul. Yeah, like how I was during the COVID times. Bajaj Finance was a blunder, I thought. I did that during the bottom. Yeah, it rewarded me well.
Sorry.
But not a long time, like it's just 5 years, so I have started.
And what kind of returns have you got?
I can say like, so actually I haven't calculated direct returns because it has been in a staggered manner, but CAGR I can say like must have beaten the index, I'm not sure.
That's one issue with the brokers in India, they don't provide XIR. You can't figure out कि direct stocks में कितना बन रहा है. exactly?
Actually, Zero has added the feature right now, but it is for individual scripts, not for the whole portfolio.
Correct.
I switched to Zero recently. Like it is second month. I was like having share
Acha.
for a long time.
Interesting.
And how has your experience been using these two different
So
apps?
I don't like do any active trading. So like one day only I like log in, I buy, that's it. उसके बाद कुछ नहीं. So didn't matter much.
बढ़िया है.
Yeah, so mostly I do the 90% mutual fund investing, SIP with normal way, and 10% is like whatever the Nifty, right? So whatever I understand from those 50 stocks, take an example of a big 10 stocks of the Nifty, right? Which I understand. I'm from the kind of tech background, so tech stocks, and that's what usually the stuff that.
And how do you pick your funds?
Funds, I would say, I'm kind of a conservative person, so I started my journey 5 years back with Nifty 50, played Nifty 50 for 3 years.
Index.
Index fund, yeah. And then recently I moved to Flexigap, so I only have 3 funds. One is Nifty 50 index fund, one is Flexigap, again the big Flexigap, the one everyone has, I think. And then
Which is Paraparik.
and then one is a small cap, and then recently I added one mid cap actually. So yeah, 4.
How recently did you add it?
So mid cap I added like 6 months back.
Acha, so you got a good return there, sitting on a quite a good return.
Yeah, so I would say I'm on the small cap and mid cap. It is good, and the Paraparik is also, I think, overall is like if I just give you XIR of mutual fund, right, it is like 20%, 20%. So that is much more than what I expected initially. It's 12-13%.
Awesome.
Also, one thing I would like to add, like I said, I was a conservative kind of investor, but contrary to it, I have a very concentrated portfolio. Like only 6 stocks I have. So like, can't say conservative. Yeah. Reason I don't go for mutual funds is like I don't like much to diversify. It's very difficult to find like one mutual fund out of all them for me.
And that to one sector, so 6
Yeah.
stocks and mostly in one.
No, not one sector. I have like finance, there's banking, but most of the consumer facing side, so I can keep a track of it.
Nice.
This reminds me one thing which I have personally observed is, so if I start checking out different mutual funds, right, I get utterly confused because there's just so many options and all of them essentially look similar because the core proposition is fundamentally the same, right? That you are investing in one fund and that fund is investing on your behalf. Then how do you choose which mutual fund to go for?
That's a very confusing affair, I agree.
Yeah.
So there are a couple of parameters you can use. For me, the topmost thing is if it's beaten the benchmark and the peer set over a long period of time. And then how has it beaten it? Like if it's a flexi cap fund, has it taken on a lot of mid and small and done it? Or is it just pure stock picking? Is it a very diversified portfolio? So if you think of Nippon small cap, for example,
Right.
it has a massive, I think more than 100 stocks.
Right.
170, right? Yeah. So it's so you have to go sort of one step deeper into that mutual fund.
Right.
Uh,
Got it. Cool. Any last questions from the audience? All good?
So I can go with one.
Yeah.
So like mega programs like say Make in India, right? These come with a mixed bag of outcomes. So how do these big investors think about such programs in terms of allotting their equity or in general how to map it out?
Sure.
So any findings you guys had as part of your research right now?
I think it's a very important question. So I'll tell you a story, right? So it was 2009 when I had gone to Shenzhen in China. तो उस टाइम पे कैसा था कि द जनरल सेंटिमेंट टुवर्ड्स चाइनीज इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स वाज चाइना का माल, चाइना का माल. आई स्टिल रिमेंबर शेंजन में देयर वाज अ ह्यूज कॉम्प्लेक्स शॉपिंग मॉल एंड यू नो ऑल फेक प्रोडक्ट्स. सोनी का टोनी था, पीएसपी का पीएमपी था, एंड यू नो आई बेसिकली बॉट अ स्पीकर. इट वाज बाय अ कंपनी कॉल्ड टोनी. आई प्लेड टिम्बलैंड का बाउंस एंड व्हेन द फर्स्ट बास केम इट ब्लू ऑफ, right? But then see the journey from there to today, right? if Silicon Valley is where software happens, you know, China is where the hardware happens, right? You take Shenzhen, you take Guangzhou, everything, right? So कैसा है कि Make in India, PLI and all of these schemes will take a lot of time to fructify. You know, it will take half a decade or a decade to actually materialize into something meaningful. For now, what the government has done is that, you know, we have a strength in our numbers. You know, we have a strength in our domestic demand. So why not, you know, urge these companies or incentivize these companies to come manufacture in India so that, you know, they get some incentives and the government also takes care of its job dilemma basically. Because, you know, like I said, जो हमारा demographic advantage है वो disadvantage नहीं होना चाहिए, or else, you know, we will go the Venezuela route because civil unrest will happen. See, खाली दिमाग शैतान का दिमाग है, ठीक है? If people sit idle, they will do some nonsense. Might as well keep them occupied. So the way to see it is that, you know, see, the government has launched these schemes. Political stability is there, which means that all of these schemes can be carried forward in the next 5-year term of the political power that is coming in, right? So it's a very good sign. The problem statement that India has today can be taken care by of this. So एक तीर से दो निशाने हो जाते हैं. एक तो अपना करंट अकाउंट का प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व हो जाता है थोड़ा बहुत, एंड दूसरा हमारा जो एम्प्लॉयमेंट का प्रॉब्लम है दैट कैन अराइज इन द फ्यूचर इज ऑल्सो टेकन केयर ऑफ. See, the domestic demand itself is so high for electronics and for manufactured products that, you know, even if they don't export from here, that's fine. You know, you go to an airport and आप luggage tray में देखो किसके पास कितने इलेक्ट्रॉनिक आइटम्स होते हैं. पहले एक फ़ोन होता था, अभी 2 फ़ोन है, एयरपॉड्स है, स्मार्ट वॉच है, क्या क्या नहीं है भगवान जाने. People have 2 laptops also these days, right? So this is a mega theme. मतलब you have the facts, you know, you have your circumstantial evidence as well. मतलब you have evidence as well, and then you join the आप dots को connect करो, as simple as that. And that is how you deduce कि चलो ठीक है, this is a good step. Now take the case of toys. You know, 5 quarters back तक we used to import $400 million of toys. Now we export. We are a net exporter of toys. So good things are happening, right? So ये सब आप देख के you can deduce कि okay, this is a good step.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Thank you for coming in.
Light बंद कर दो second. चलो, I'll just quickly wrap up the outro and we'll wrap up the shoot in the next 5 minutes. And then we can probably move outside.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to click selfies, get their copy signed, we can do that outside. Thank you for watching today's episode of the Civilization Project podcast. We had Aditya and Neil, and we had a fascinating conversation around how to make our investment decisions. If you have any questions, if you have any suggestions, please drop them in the comments below. And keep watching this space for the next episodes. There's some really interesting stuff which is being lined up. My name is Prathamesh, and I thank you for watching the Civilization Project podcast. Thanks. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.